Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. Joining me today in another timey-wimey episode. It is my morning. It is, I guess, afternoon, I believe, Jamie?
Yeah, 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me.
Very nice. So, Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jesse.
So, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm 36 and I'm from the east of England, quite close to Cambridge. So I guess you guys probably all know where Cambridge is. It's quite famous. I'm married. I've got one daughter and I'm a big Bruce fan. Bruce has been a massive part of my life, at least the last 20 years. And I'm really excited at the moment after seeing him twice again this year to chat with Jesse about the lost albums.
Super. I'm looking forward to talking about everything, but we always like to start at the beginning, Jamie. So, where did you grow up and what kind of music was your family listening to?
So I grew up in a small town. It's an historic town called Wisbech, and my parents were very much into sort of like popular music of the day. My dad was mad into Simply Red, sort of Mick Hucknall. My mum liked things like Tina Turner, Whitney Houston, that kind of thing. But for me, I was always drawn to like a loud song with loud guitars in it.
All
So
right.
my musical journey very much started with me like listening to MTV, listening to like music channels that when I was growing up. So I focused a lot on Kerrang, Scuzz, was into like proper rock music. First big band that I got into was Bon Jovi. So it
Okay.
seems to be a common theme with me that all of like my favorite artists come from New Jersey. So I
Uh,
was a big Bon Jovi fan growing up, and then got very much into My Chemical Romance, the
okay.
Gaslight Anthem, and then Bruce has come in and wiped the floor with everybody else. And yeah, he's become the soundtrack to my life.
Can you remember when you first discovered Bruce and what about his music spoke to you?
When I was about 16, I got brought a book which was it was 100 albums to listen to before you die. And
Okay.
I was very much at that sort of stage there that I wanted to find out about what were these amazing bands like Pink Floyd, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, all these bands that everybody spoke about. What was all of their best albums? And Born to Run obviously was featured in this book. So I went away, brought Born to Run, listened to it, and thought, oh, this is pretty good. I enjoyed this. It reminded me quite a bit of Meatloaf, and I liked Meatloaf at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Later, we'd find out like a lot of the E Street Band played on the album.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until round about 2007 that when Magic came out that I heard Radio Nowhere. And then it clicked with me that it was the same guy that was singing Born to Run was now bringing out sort of new music, which connected with sort of the music that I was listening to. So I absolutely adored Magic, played Magic to absolute death, and then went back and listened to the back catalogue from there. And then by the time Working on a Dream came out, I was collecting bootlegs. I'd listened to like all of the different albums, and no other musician had spoke to me like Bruce had spoke to me. There was an album there for every sort of emotion that I was feeling. And when you're early teenagers, late teens, early 20s, you're going through different things like different relationships, your relationships with your parents, sort of
Yeah.
jobs, like transitioning to adulthood. There was all of a sudden this guy here that had wrote all of these songs detailing how I was feeling and putting it into music. And like albums like The River, like there was just such depth to the lyrics and the music that it was just different to any other kind of musician and music that I'd listened to before. And I think it was the different styles that I'd go from like Nebraska. And I remember laying late one night with just like a old school sort of MP3 player listening to Nebraska. And I'd never heard anything like it. Like it was a stormy
Yeah.
night outside. And this sounds like Bruce, like one of his stories. It was a
Yeah.
stormy night outside and it was thunder and lightning. And I'd put my headphones in And it was these stories of serial killers and murderers and like people down on their luck. And I remember listening to Atlantic City, and I'd heard Atlantic City live before, but never heard like the stripped back Nebraska version of it. Just absolutely blew me away. And by the end of the album, I just had to stop and then listen to it again. But then you've got your different kind of like music where you want to be driving. I very much, when I was growing up, I lived out in the sticks, so I was driving everywhere to get to the city or
Yeah.
wherever I needed to. You got Born in the USA to wind your window down and play like loud to, or if you're
Yeah.
coming back late at night, you've got The River to listen to or Tunnel of Love. And
Yeah.
there's just so much there. And then getting into, I guess, when I became what I consider myself like a diehard Bruce fan, it was that period between Working on a Dream and Wrecking Ball.
Yeah. So I
And
wanted
it
to
was,
ask you about that. I think it's interesting, right? You discovered Born to Run and you liked it, but that wasn't necessarily your road to Damascus moment. And I love when you hear stories of this, because there are less than kind fans. I call them the Bruce snobs, that after anything after darkness is never going to stand up
yeah,
to the originals. And I, similar to you, I became I was a casual fan, but seeing him live in concert after the Rising tour is what made me a super fan. So I love Magic, right? I
yeah.
love Wrecking Ball, Letter to You. And so I think that's interesting, right? That it's later Bruce that spoke to you first. So I cut you off, but go ahead and talk about you've discovered him with a new passion, Magic, working on a dream. So go on, continue what you were saying, Jamie.
Yeah, so for a lot of people, obviously, Working on a Dream was an album that not many fans are a massive fan of. It was really special for me because even though now, if we were sat here ranking him, Working on a Dream is definitely lower tier Bruce. But going into a record shop and being able to buy a new Bruce album on the day that it came out, and like a song like My Lucky Day, I just love that song because it was one of the first new Bruce songs that I was massively interested in his music that I was able to go and pick up. But it was that strange period because obviously we lost Clarence. So I never got a chance to see Bruce perform with Clarence. But you'd seen this entire history of like the band with Clarence. And then it was very much that I wondered, is he going to continue? That massive sort of part of the E Street Band has gone. What's have I missed out on seeing like the power of the E Street Band? And
Yeah.
so when Wrecking Ball came along, and when it came out, and there was people featured from the E Street Band in it, but it's a solo album. I was like, how's this going to be toured? I've got to see Bruce,
And
but
at
am I
this
going to get
point,
to see?
yeah, I want to make sure. And at this point, you had not seen him, right?
No. So first time I saw them was in 2012, Hard Rock Calling.
Okay.
So that's the big festival in Hyde Park. So I was lucky pretty soon after Wrecking Ball come out, there was the tour announcement. It's going to be an E Street Band tour. Jake's going to come on board. So it's a bit of a
Yeah.
relief for me that I'm going to get to see sort of Max, Steve, Gary,
Yeah.
Niels, like the whole band. And then Wrecking Ball, obviously, is a special album for me because again, it was the first album which I could go and see the tour and be able to follow on like Greasy Lake, on
Yeah.
Backstreets, and be like involved in the fan community and the hype around it. And it was such a special moment. It was one of the first live Bruce shows that I ever watched was the Hammersmith show from, was it 75? So Born to Run. So first time he played over in the UK. And it starts with a piano version of Thunder Road. And that was what Bruce did the first time I saw him in 2012. He came out, just him and obviously Roy on the piano, and they played Thunder Road like it was played back in 1975. And that was just one of the most amazing moments of my life, being able to stand there and hear that version of Thunder Road. And then I think we went straight into Badlands afterwards, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow. This is just like a transcending moment of my life. And then the set list was fantastic. At the end, he brought out Paul McCartney,
Yeah.
and it was just the greatest thing that I'd ever seen.
So I'm curious. having that, I've had other fans who are younger that have that worry about not seeing him. And I always preface this question, the amount of times you've seen Bruce is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are, Jamie. Because of someone like yourself, right? You came to this relatively later in life as far as
Yeah.
Bruce's life. So do you count how many shows you've, and if
Yes, I've
so,
seen him
how many?
seven times.
Okay.
So like I say, when you're talking to other people, it is relatively smaller than sort of fans that when I went to Manchester, me and my wife went a couple of months ago to the second night, the Land
Yeah.
of Hope and Dreams tour. The guy next to us, that was his 50th show, and we were
Yeah.
chatting about it. And now when we were talking, we had quite an honest conversation. His first Bruce show cost him £10. So I
Yeah.
guess that's about $7. My first Bruce show cost me £120. So
Yeah.
probably about $100. So when I was going and seeing him for a start, it was when I was early, like late teenagers, early 20s. And
Yeah.
£100 is a lot of money. You're starting out your first couple of jobs. And then, unfortunately for me, after I managed to see him twice on the Wrecking Ball tour, once on the River tour, he then had quite a long hiatus where he was doing Broadway. We then had obviously COVID come over and set everybody's plans up.
Yeah.
In that time, I got married, had a kid, bought a house. Your disposable income comes down.
Does. Yes.
Which means then when 2023 rolls around, we're looking at having to go to London, which is capital city. So you're paying massive money for hotels. You're paying £100 a head for tickets. That I can only afford one show per sort of tour. So we went to Hyde Park the second night, and then we went to Wembley the first night in 2024. Then this year, money's been a bit better, so I managed to go to the second night of Manchester and the first night at Anfield. But an amazing journey. And yeah, the one thing that I do count being very lucky is having access to the Nugs releases and the
Sure.
archive release, being able to go back and experience some of those live shows. Yes, you wasn't actually in the audience, but you can really
Yeah.
spend time in a particular and collecting different bootlegs as well. So especially with the Rising I absolutely love the sort of the back end of that 2003 tour.
Hmm.
And it's so easy now to be able to go on the internet, and fans do share bootlegs, audience recordings. So I've listened to like the last 10 or so shows of the Rising tour, which they were bringing out a lot of 92, 93 material. And that was absolutely amazing. So I feel like I can go back and experience those times because we're lucky with the technology that we've got now. You can recommend me a song now, and in 2 minutes I can be on YouTube and probably find that song. Whereas there's something that's so unique to this kind of time frame. But I'm happy to have seen the shows that I've seen, and I've been so lucky that the set list that I've seen when I saw him in Wembley in 2013, we got All of Darkness, we got Lost in the Floods, which is one of my
Yeah.
probably top two favorite Bruce songs. I got Radio Nowhere, Racing in the Street, and then seeing him in Coventry in 2016, I got a lot of River songs, including Drive All Night, which is one of
Yeah.
my favorite. And yeah, I've been so lucky that I managed to get a lot of different material. Even the Manchester show that we went to, getting Human Touch, which is
Yeah.
again top five Bruce songs. There's
Hmm.
always magic in whatever show you go to. And
Yeah.
I'm like you that it doesn't matter how many shows you go to. It's about what sort of, and it may sound a bit daft, it's in what's in your heart. Like, what do you
Yeah.
around yourself and your life is unique to you, and music is an important part of everybody's life. When I got married, the song me and my wife walked out of the registry office to was Thunder Roads.
Not.
Not many people would have that as on there. My sort of wedding reception, how we had a dedicated section of Bruce music,
Yeah.
like little bits and pieces that
Yeah.
again, geographically, we don't get many shows, and I have to travel, and it's the costing to get to shows.
Sure. So I have a
And
question. It was your wife a fan before, or have you converted her?
converted and it will make you laugh. When
Okay.
we got together and was interested in music, we're both big fans of the Gaslight anthem, and that was one of the first things that drew us together.
Mm.
Bruce had brought Brian Fallon out at Hyde Park in 2009, and they played No Surrender together. It's on the Blu-ray. So she'd heard of Bruce, but she always thought he was this star from the 80s and thinking of Dancing in the Dark. And she was like, I don't get it that you like this guy that sung Dancing in the Dark. It's like really old school music.
Yeah.
And then her favorite Bruce album is Magic, because I played that and I was like, listen to this. And she was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this is pretty good. And then obviously being in the car around the house, she's heard everything. Some of her favorite songs are like Mary's Place. So
Yeah.
she like massively likes The Rising. But then I'll catch her listening to like Darkness from front to back.
Yeah.
And she's a big fan of Greetings, one of her, and that kind of Bruce writing. When Letter to You came out, the song that she loved the most on there was Janie Needs a Shooter, which I think was round about demoed about 78. I know Bruce had played it around then. And she was
So,
really surprised by all of these
yeah.
songs were older songs that she was connecting to, like Lost in the Flood, Spirit in the Night. Atlantic City is one of her favorite songs. So I took her to see Bruce in 2023, and it was the most amazing show that she'd ever seen. And I was like, you get it, you've seen
Yeah.
him.
That's
And
funny.
then,
The I was curious as you're going through this journey and doing this, when you go back to these older albums, do you connect to them? As because sometimes I enjoy the older albums, but I like the new ones a little better. So talk to me a little bit about that.
yeah, because I when I went back and started listening to the older albums, my age
Yeah,
started to sync up a little bit of Bruce's age.
yeah,
So I got Born to Run, and that sort of that need to want to be almost running away from my hometown and going
yeah,
somewhere different, and then found my way back. What Bruce did, Darkness and The River were the two albums that after I went on a mad magic binge that I came back and listened to. And Darkness especially, it was the characters in Darkness.
sure.
The River was an album there that sort of when I had a relationship that fell apart, that
Yeah,
was very much an album that I really connected with. And the first two, I really like Greetings. I must say that I've always really liked the singer-songwriter aspect of
yeah,
that. Have struggled a bit more with the second album, just because my sort of musical taste is more sort of guitar rock driven,
yeah,
whereas second album's a little bit more jazzy.
yeah,
So I really like E Street Shuffle. I do Sandy. Incident obviously is an amazing song, but songs like Kitty's Back have always been ones that when I've
yeah.
got them live, I'm like, oh, it's great to get this, but I'm probably not going to turn this on like of my own free will at home.
When
I,
one of
I
the so one of the things I think is interesting, and I wanted to ask, as a citizen there of Great Britain and UK, what were your thoughts of his political thoughts on this tour?
I loved it. I think I'm not a fan of Donald Trump at all. He goes against completely everything that my core beliefs are. And we're going through a very strange period politically in the UK as well. We've got a Labour government in here, which Labour in theory is for the people, but we're not kind of feeling that. And there's a lot of political unrest in our country as well. And you can feel real empathy in Bruce's words that sort of second night when he came out, Manchester, there was a real tension in the air because Bruce had obviously first night come out, done his big speech about Trump. And then in between shows, Trump had then retaliated and come
Yes,
out with his petty comments. There was a real tension in the air because we thought, is he going to come out? Is he going to do the same thing? Is
is
he going
yeah,
to?
okay, was that a one and done, right?
It's
Was he just okay, he's got it and now it's out of his, how do we put this? It's out of
out
his
of his
system
system.
now and
Yeah.
he's gonna, yeah, move on. And so yeah, please continue.
Yeah, lights went down, and then obviously the band all came out, and Bruce come forward, and it was the same speech again. But there was so much passion there, and him saying about he's been a proud ambassador, and this is like the songs of the America that's in his heart and what he's dreamed. And as a
Yeah.
kid, the area that I grew up in was a very boring area. It's
Okay.
flatlands. There's nothing exciting going on. There's no sort of stadiums. We don't have gigs. You always have to travel there. And America as a kid was always this amazing place that it was like the land of hope and dreams. You guys made all the
Yeah.
movies that kind of entertained us. We gave you guys Doctor Who. We
I
gave you
love.
Who.
Thank you.
it, it was always this sort of amazing sort of place, and I got to go to America, and it lived up to, well, going to Florida, and I guess Florida is, you go to Disneyland and all the parks and everything like that. It is larger than life, and everybody's amazing, and everybody is friendly, and you come home and you're disappointed to have left, and then you grow up, and then you start seeing that things that you get more politically astute, and you start seeing that
Yeah.
things are not quite as they should be. And I think Bruce has always been a good sort of thing for me, that pointing things out. So Magic, when you listen to Magic, that's
Yeah.
all obviously about the Iraq War and everything that's going on there. But then listening to like the live album, what is it, 75 to 80, 86, and when he's talking about Reagan, and I was like, oh, everybody loved Reagan. Reagan was this film star type president. And
Yeah.
then you go back and you actually read about Reagan and Thatcher, and you actually think, well, were these guys actually as great as what we thought they were?
I had
And
the same thoughts. I remember thought it was badass that England had a female prime minister. Oh, that's just so cool. And then when you like watch like a film Blinded by the Light and look at history, you
mhm,
realize that a lot of the practices she was putting in place were similar to the practices that the Republican Party and Reagan were doing at the time. It took him forever before he used the words AIDS. And I
yeah,
remember during COVID, I had a wonderful friend of mine was on the podcast, and she said, I did not think I would see another president mishandle a pandemic in my lifetime. And to see that he did. Do you've talked a little bit about this, but I have to take a turn for a minute. Are you a Doctor Who fan?
oh, massively. I don't know if you can see behind me. That is my Doctor Who Blu-rays,
Ah,
DVDs.
nice. Yes.
So
I see
yeah,
your Bruce, and there's your Doctor Who. Who's your
yeah.
doctor?
Oh, I'm a massive. I got into Doctor Who. I found Doctor Who when the TV movie came out.
Okay.
Paul McGann was the first Doctor that I came across. Loved
Yes.
the TV movie, and then got into Big Finish because there was no Doctor Who on the air. I managed to get some videotapes of John Pertwee and some Sylvester McCoy. But yeah, it's going to be Paul McGann, it's going to be Pertwee, and it's probably David Tennant as well, because David Tennant was that sweet spot when I was sort of 13, 14, 15. He came along and I was like, oh, he's just the coolest doctor I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard because, and I don't want to give you a naff response. I love them all.
Yeah,
Like,
sure. And so my one of my other podcasts is Next Stop Everywhere. It's a Doctor Who
yeah,
podcast. And we love we'll go watching old doctors. And the latest episode was the War Games was released on Blu-ray in color. And they took that
yeah,
10 chapter down to an hour and 40 minutes. And I talked about I just love watching the second Doctor with Jamie and Zoe. It's amazing. Yeah, in fact, when people ask, I add my Doctor Who and Springsteen fandom. If you had a TARDIS, well, I'd go to every Springsteen concert ever. That's what
yeah,
I would do with the TARDIS.
yeah.
Forget about all this other stuff. I just want to go back to see Bruce shows.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think and I promise listeners we'll get back to Bruce in a minute. Yeah, I loved for the 50th anniversary when we got the little Paul McCann, we got to see him regenerate to the War
Yeah,
Doctor.
Night of the Doctor.
And
Yeah,
I was lucky enough. I'll send you a link if you want. I was able to interview Paul McGann for a convention. And so I was
Amazing.
able,
Please
yeah,
do.
it was a lot of fun. Him and Colin Baker. I was able to interview both of them for a convention. And we've done some Next Stop Everywheres with him. I just would have loved him to have another chance to be the Doctor on film.
So,
And at first I didn't get Eccleston, right? Like
yeah,
I found Doctor Who through Torchwood. I was
yeah,
watching Torchwood, loved Captain Jack, and so I asked my buddy, I said, "Hey, I want to watch some Doctor Who episodes that have Captain Jack." And he said, "It's just easier here." And so he gave me the first season with Eccleston. And then I went, "Oh, I want more." And so I caught up on Tenet. And so Matt Smith was my first Doctor that I was watching
yeah.
live. So yeah, if I had to put, I'd say probably Tenet and Martha, my favorite companion. I love them. But I'm like you, I love them all. I'm really sad that we're not getting another season with Judy Godway. I
Yeah, me
think
too.
man, it just feels like it doesn't feel like I realize the premise of the show is the doctor changes,
Yeah,
but it just feels like he was just starting to scratch. I love Jodie.
yeah,
And so every time I watch an episode, just to push back Jamie, I go, oh yeah, this is my favorite doctor. Oh yeah,
yeah.
this is my favorite doctor. Oh God, you see why Baker is so beloved. Oh man, you see what Colin was doing, and boy, he had some horrible support. And yeah, yeah, I love it. So you mentioned how much the different albums and stuff. Are there other that you haven't talked about albums or songs that mean a lot to you?
So I guess Nebraska, Tunnel of Love, Magic, they're
Yeah.
probably going to be my top three. Songs that mean a lot to me, Racing in the Street, I just think that is probably the greatest song ever,
So
especially live with the live
couple
coda.
yeah. So a couple years ago, I had about six fans join me and we did a round robin tournament, 64 songs,
Yeah.
and Racing in the Street ended up being number one.
I just can't see how you cannot love that song. I just
Yeah,
think it's got everything. It's got the musical side of things, but it's got the story side of things as well. And I just want to make just a random asides, which I
yeah,
found with me and like a lot of slightly younger Bruce fans, we
yeah,
tend to find that we actually can really enjoy Lucky Town, Human Touch, and that
yes,
whole other band tour. And the reason I think we do is because we know there's E Street afterwards. We know the story continues with them. Whereas
yeah,
at the time, and I was speaking to another guy at the Manchester show, and he's got a new appreciation through listening to it's one of the Nugs releases,
yeah,
not the Berlin show. It was whatever the '93 show was out in Germany. It may be Berlin, it may be one of the other countries. And
yeah,
he said he didn't realize how good the other band was because he went and hate watched them because he was like,
yeah,
oh, it's going to be Crystal playing saxophone, not Clarence.
yeah,
Oh, they're not going to be playing like all of the old war horses. And he said he now has listened to the Nugs release and he was like, I really get it. I really like what Bruce was trying to do in 92, 93. And I found myself, and there's another lad at a similar sort of age to me. When we speak about things, we've got a real appreciation for that era because it's something different, because we know we've got the Rising to look forward to. The
yeah.
Rising had already happened by the time that we got into Bruce. So that's just a little tangent there.
No, I'm glad you said that. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, right, is I had a guy, and I wish I could remember his name because I told the story multiple times, Jamie, but he was sharing. I've had a couple of people who are old fans that I talked to him about that dark times, right, where he's in California, the band's been fired. But my guest was saying that he was standing in the pit during the reunion tour and he's listening to the band and he thinks to himself, this is it. This is the height of my Springsteen fan. He fired the band, he's come back, they've toured, we've gotten a greatest hits, and maybe every few years or so they'll get the band together and tour. But really, this is the ultimate for me. And he says, I would love to go back to that young version of me and say, you haven't seen nothing yet. This is halftime in the match.
Yeah,
You have Broadway, you have Magic, you have The Rising, you have Letter to You, you have an
yeah,
autobiography, you have world tours waiting for you. He's just getting started. I just think that's a great thought. And
definitely.
if you're surprised, Jamie, I've had multiple fans that have shared their first live show was the other band. And
Yeah,
I've never heard your thoughts. I've never heard anyone express that before, but I think you're spot on is that we can enjoy it maybe because subconsciously we know this was just a break. He was just
yes.
having another fun, and we're gonna get more E Street Band music down the road. So yeah. How about Western Stars? You haven't talked about that. Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, absolutely love Western Stars. Western Stars came at a really special time for me in my
Okay.
life. I was buying a house with my wife. I remember the first teasers coming out on Instagram. We'd been down to the seaside, down to the beach with her and her sister. There was no phone signal down there. When we got back to the car, I looked on my phone and it was about 15 messages from people saying, Bruce is teasing something. And it was like, I think the first picture that we saw was like a cactus or something like
Yeah.
that. Obviously, Western Stars had been teased quite a bit around the time that I was getting into the band. Sort of Western Stars and this album set out in the West had been mentioned a few times. They said I got real sort of Jimmy Webb sort of influences, but
Yeah.
Bacharach, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, could this be it? Because it had been quite a while since we'd got new Bruce. And again, watching that come out, it was we'd brought the house, my wife was pregnant, and then a new Bruce album coming out. It was like connected into one of the most happiest times of my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that album. It just feels like such a journey from Hitchhiker all the way to Moonlight Motel. Moonlight Motel is one of my favorite songs. I just think that is a gorgeous song. The actual storytelling in that song and the amount of depth to that song as well. There's so many different theories on the end of the song when Bruce is talking about pouring one last shot for me, one last shot for you. Has his wife passed on? And then somebody said that actually, is it that he's committing suicide? Is that last shot runs
Yeah.
out, him going there to finish his life? And there's so many different, and that's the beauty of Bruce, that you can find so many different layers and so many depths. And one person's story that they can get from it is a different person's story that they can get from it. I just think it's a gorgeous album. I think it is, I'm going to say it's the most unique album in Bruce's canon. But now we've got Twilight Hours, which kind of complements that beautifully. But I adore the album. I think it's an album that you listen to and you feel like you go on a journey with these characters that
Yeah.
it's so cinematic. And I love the live show that they did in Bruce's barn. This is
Yeah.
how dedicated my wife is to me.
Okay.
3 days after giving birth and bringing my daughter home from the hospital, we went to the cinema to watch the Western Stars movie. While we were both completely sleep deprived, her mum and dad had said, we'll have the baby. Jamie can't miss this. You two both go and watch it. And it was amazing to watch it because you bring your first child into the world and then you're watching this amazing music. It's something that's always just going to be the special part of my life.
I love
And then
that so much. That is such a great story. So you did mention at the very beginning, we got new music this summer. We got a lot of new music. Talk to me about the box set. Tell me how you felt, and then what have you explored, and what are your thoughts on it?
I've loved it. I think it's an amazing collection of songs of different eras. that I tried to take things slowly.
Yeah.
I didn't do one of these. I've had friends that have literally gone from the 83 sessions, pressed play, and listened through to the end of Perfect World. I've loved the whole sort of 90s period of Bruce, and I've always been fascinated by the Streets of Philadelphia sessions. So
Okay.
that was the album that I went to first because I just wanted to see what it sounded like, see what the songwriting was. It was one of those mythical albums that we'd all heard so much about, like the last sort of 20 years or so for me, where you're hearing sort of little snippets of like Shane Fontaine might say, oh, we did this on this album, or Bruce mentioned it in his autobiography. And I think it's the fact, other than sort of Streets of Philly and Missing, we've heard Secret Garden, but that was obviously an East Street version. We heard Waiting on the End of the World and an East Street version. We haven't heard of any of these other songs. Nobody's heard them. So it was an experience to put your headphones on and just listen to this music that nobody else had ever heard before. And honestly thinks the Streets of Philly sessions is going to be top five Bruce albums for me once everything settles down, because you have that recency bias where you listen to it and you think it's the greatest thing I've ever listened to,
Yeah,
and then
sure.
it's coming back to it. But I can't stop listening to it. Then I went from that, I went to a weird kind of U-turn. I then jumped to Perfect World because I wanted something to listen to while I was walking the dog that I didn't need to really focus on. And
Yeah.
then I thought Perfect World was a really cool rock album. It was the Bruce sort
Yeah.
of that I love. And what impressed me more than anything was songs on Cutting Knife, Great Depression, was how when we think of outtakes and B-sides and things like that, which a lot of people thought the album was going to be, how much musical depth was on there and
Yeah.
how these songs were beautifully created. And like Blind Man, like that was from 2002, and just seeing what Bruce was thinking at certain periods. And then I went back and then went pretty much chronologically going through 83 sessions. Really loved that because I'm a big Nebraska fan. So that's a logical step from there. Somewhere north of Nashville, it's just infectious.
Yeah.
The ballads on there, especially Poor Side of Town, that sort of thing. Silver Mountain, I think, is an amazing song. Then went over to Faithless. Faithless was an album that really surprised me. That
Yeah.
I thought, oh, might be the one that I'm not going to listen to that often, but there's so much depth to it and
Yeah.
little links to probably Western Stars with sort of the cinematic feel of it.
Yeah.
And then going over to Twilight Hours as well. Absolutely love the storytelling in Twilight Hours. I just thought that
Yeah.
was just, oh, I forgot to talk about Inyo. Inyo, I do really Ghost of
Yeah.
Tom Joad, another album, and Inyo complemented that. But it's the stories in them that just captivate you. But yeah, I think it's an amazing just to get 83 songs, just what a
Yeah.
present to be given to us. But I think it's going to be one of those things that is going to take time to slow down and take an album at a time, because normally we get
Yeah.
probably 12, 13 songs. 83 songs, and we've only had it a month, and I'm still
Yeah.
finding new little bits in songs, and it's listening to them in different ways, like headphones on walking the dog, or listening to the
Yeah.
vinyl, listen to it loud in the car. There's just so much depth there, and it's just, like I say, the only way that I can describe it, it's just an amazing gift to. It's cost a lot, but for
Did, but
Bruce to be able to say, somebody that
yeah.
is quite guarded. And what is really interesting in the book is where Bruce says that he's very careful about the arc that he is telling, like the story he wants to tell with his career. And you look at a lot of these, and I think this is what we're going to talk about shortly, about what if. But there's nothing on there that I don't think subverts where the arc of his
Yeah.
story is going. I think it just complements it all beautifully.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Have you given thoughts to what if some of these had been released?
Yeah, and this is what I want to do for you then, Jesse. So I'm going to
Okay.
take this back to Doctor Who. One of my
Okay.
favorite Doctor Who episodes is an episode in series 4 called Turn Left. And it's a story where the companion in that story is given a choice, what would happen, or if she turned left instead of right, and what would the world look like? So this is what I was thinking about, and I've gone
Okay.
through sort of the albums and wanted to
Please.
run what I think Bruce's story could have gone.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll see what you think as well, Jesse.
Please.
83 sessions. So we've just had Nebraska come out in September 82. Born in the USA has been pretty much recorded. So that was recorded in May of 82. And then Bruce kind of panics at that point and then goes off to LA and writes these amazing group of songs, which is our 83 sessions. My big thing is if he's now turning around to his label and says, I want to put these songs out and they've heard Born in the USA, what's that label going to say to him? Because they've already taken a risk and given
Yeah.
him Nebraska, and there's been no tour. Like Nebraska's sold, but it's not been amazingly
Right.
like successful. The River has been put him on the cusp of stardom. And then Bruce has said that he's got scared to take that next step. And then we've gone with Nebraska. And now we're looking at these 83 sessions. Now, the thing for me is if he puts this out, it's going to have a massive impact on him and on perhaps his trajectory because he's
Yeah.
going to need to tour this. How is he going to tour this? Sort of, if he's going to tour Nebraska in 83 sessions, it's not really going to be a E Street Band tour. I would imagine
Right.
it'd be some kind of solo tour, which if that
Eh,
solo tour then happens, does
Yeah.
Steve leave the band? If Steve doesn't leave the band, no Patty, no Niels. So does Bruce take another year and does a solo tour of Nebraska and then comes back and then he's ready to look at his Born in the USA material? But knowing Bruce, has he now got to a stage where he's now going to be Born in the USA? That this was music that I wrote in 82, 83 sessions. He's toured for a year, maybe 2 years. It's 1985. Has the world moved on?
Yeah.
Reagan's in power. What's his story now? And the biggest thing is he's still got Steve potentially in the band. He puts out a band. Maybe he's gone back and he's repurposed like Murder Incorporated, songs like that. But what's his relationship going to be? Because there's no Patty there in the band. So does he bring her across, or has Patty gone off and had her own career? That's a big thing for Bruce there. That could he that as a turn right for Bruce instead of turning left, his entire without Patty, we've got no tunnel of love situation. If Steve's not left, no Niels. Like it opens a whole big thing. The other thing is we get no Dancing in the Dark, which broke him on MTV.
Yeah.
So it opens a big thing that does he then decide to say, actually, I've done these two singer-songwriter records. This is who I am. I don't want to push that fame anymore. And then does he settle down and become more of a solo artist at that point? So that was
Yeah.
my kind of thoughts around 83.
So I have a counter thought. And so one of the things I wonder is if he had not done the anthem version of Born to Run and not created Dancing in the Dark, stuck with more of a, do you think Born in the USA would have been as massive? And does his career become Neil Young, which is a great career, beloved, very respected, but never the superstar that this Born in the USA album did. And I think your point is that too, that if he had done this and the dominoes fall the way you're suggesting, this may have been a very, very different Bruce career.
100%. And I think that's the perfect analogy because Neil Young was the person that I was thinking of, that
Okay.
someone that is critically beloved,
Yeah.
but you don't see a stadium tour,
Yeah.
arenas or theaters, don't you?
Yeah.
And that's where I would wonder that if Bruce would then go down that kind of route and how that would end up looking for him. Because Born in the USA came out at a time when you look at, you've got Madonna, you've got Prince, and then you can see Dancing in the Dark fitted within that popular culture. And with if you're releasing Born in the USA, like it's the most misunderstood song of all time because so many people
Yeah.
picked up it as a massive anthem. If you release that in the original version, then there's no way that you can misrepresent what that song's about. It's stark.
Yeah, exactly.
It fits the need. So that's my thoughts on 83. Are you ready
Okay.
for me to go over to
Please, let's go. I
let's
love
move
this.
forward to take you to 94 now then, Jesse. So Bruce
Okay.
sits down with Kurt Loder on MTV and says, next year I've got a new album coming. And everybody gets hyped. And in spring of 95, according to Bruce, the farewell party drops.
Yeah.
Now, I think this album would be very well received. I think in One Beautiful Morning, it has a top 10 hit on there that fits the sign of. We're looking at sort of the albums that come out at the round about that time. You're looking at Tom Petty with Wildflowers.
Yeah.
And I think it's got that similar sort of vibe to it as well. Like that song, I think would do really well. You've had Streets of Philly, which has reignited Bruce within sort of the mainstream. I think it's
Yeah.
given him a new sort of critical acclaim as well. And I think that would then follow. And I think the album would be very well received. My big question on that one would be what would the tour look like? Would he take the other band out again?
Yeah.
The issue with that is, would he be able to sell out arenas, or would he looking for smaller theaters? And what would because if we're talking about loops and bits and pieces, would he be then taking these songs and then making them more traditional sounding with Zach on the drums on everything? Or
Yeah.
is he going to take this album out and perform it solo? Is he going to do the Tom Joad acoustic songs with this?
Yeah.
Because
And
we look at some of the songs there, just what's the one song on there that he did perform live on the Tom Jones tour? The Little Things. So he already toured with an acoustic arrangement of that one. And I think then if that's a success, if he gets the critical success with that, does it give him confidence to actually create more rock albums in the solo setup? So
yeah.
instead of pivoting back to the band and tracks, does he think actually I want to work with different musicians? And then we look at that with Bruce.
Yeah.
Like he talks about confidence in doing sort of different things. So
Yeah.
would the success of this vindicate him from leaving the E Street Band behind and give him a platform to go off and do different things, different genres? And the other question I'd have with this one is, would he ever become as big again? Because he was in the right place at the wrong time with obviously 9/11 coming in and the Rising coming in. He had the band there, like an E Street band coming in, which spoke to so many people and was something that helped to heal a nation. A lot of people describe the Rising. That's Bruce back with the E Street band. Would Bruce and the other band or Bruce solo putting the Rising out have the same sort of impact? So
Yeah. And
that's
I don't
where,
think it would. One of the, I thought, I don't know if you listened to the Rolling Stone podcast where they were discussing this
yeah,
box set. And a lot of things they were talking about is how would he have toured with this? And is that part of the reason why they're just speculating why perhaps they weren't released? I don't think we'll ever know. I don't think he knows. I think it is something that it just didn't feel right for him, and it's cool that we are getting them. So yeah, very nice. Like that alternate timeline. What do you got for our next one?
so chronologically, our next one is staying in 95, but we're somewhere north of Nashville. Now,
Yeah,
this one's quite interesting because it wouldn't be called somewhere north of Nashville because that wasn't written until the late 2010s.
yeah,
So this album would look different. We know that Cynthia was recorded for this album, so that would potentially be on there. There's also other songs on here that were recorded later in like the Wrecking Ball era.
yeah,
So we're only looking at a certain amount of songs for this one. So would he have written more songs? Would he have potentially, because if he was looking at older Born in the USA outtakes, could he have brought other songs across? And instead of tracks, we
Yeah.
actually got countrified versions of his favorite songs from in the vault. And how would he release it? Because he said previously that he thought about releasing this as a double album with Tom Joad, but Night
Yeah.
and Day. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, Foo Fighters done that, sort of like a heavy rock and an acoustic album,
Yeah.
a Night and Day sort of thing. And I think that would have been a real strange reception there because you've got Repo Man on one side, and then you've got
Yeah.
Ghost of Tom Joad on the other side. And I don't know how that would have gone down in public perception there. Or would he have said, I'm going to do Tom Joad, and then after Tom Joad, I need to lighten things up, and then I'm going to put somewhere north of Nashville or whatever it was called out? Or does he say, actually, Tom Joad is too dark. I need to keep that one on the shelf, and I tour this one. And if he tours this one, he's probably going to be doing rockability tour, small
Yeah.
band, probably some of the E Street Band on there. Matty Rifkin or Marty Rifkin, isn't it? The
Hmm.
guitarist who was on Tom Petty's guitarist as well.
Yeah.
So I think that would have been a really cool tour to see Bruce out there doing country sort of
Yeah.
songs and then potentially doing country versions because we saw in the reunion tour he did a country version of No Surrender, which is fantastic. Dancing in the Dark, Redheaded Woman, Factory, Mansion on the Hill. Like you could imagine a set of the War Horses alongside
Hmm.
Repo Man, Delivery Man, Tiger Rose, all of these kind of songs. So I think that could be quite cool.
So
Then how
one of the things I do think is I thought it would have been interesting that when he did release Western Stars, and I know he didn't probably want to do a double album, but to have that as a follow-up or to combine them would have been, I think, really cool.
Yeah. I think if he was doing a tour, if we go in 2019, if he'd have said, I want to tour Western Stars, and then he could have released this halfway through a tour to liven the sets up a little bit, I think the two would
Yeah.
complement each other as well. And also, if he brought Twilight Hours into it as well, imagine these full band arrangements of the Twilight
Yeah.
Hours, or full band by like with an orchestra, Twilight Hours, somewhere north of Nashville, and Western Stars, the set list
Yeah.
there would be to die for.
Yeah, and
Um,
I would have loved if I felt like Western Stars film, as you talked about, was such a gift. I loved it. And I know a few years ago, Seth MacFarlane did a special where he was singing a Sinatra type songs and did it as a one-off. How cool would it get another film of Bruce doing that with an orchestra and not necessarily in a tuxedo, though I would buy it. I'd love to see him doing torch songs in that
yeah,
style. Yeah, it would be a lot of fun.
it would be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you forward to 1998 now, though, for
Okay.
Inyo. So Inyo again would be quite different because there would be no mariachi band on there because again that was recorded later in the 2010s.
Yeah.
So we would probably had Inyo songs mixed with Devil and Dust songs. And I think that sort of is going to be touring same theaters again. That's going to impact tracks coming out. It's going to push a reunion back. And what would that have been Bruce's career then? You've got two sort of acousticy sounding sort of albums. I get the feeling that he would be pushing a lot with sort of his audiences to not do something in a rocky vein next. So I would
Yeah.
imagine if he followed Inyo, he would then have to do something and pivot back to the band on whether we get tracks in 2000 and then
Yeah.
he tours 2000, 2001. That's what I'd get. And then it may be that where we get a stage now where we feel it goes E Street Band material gets the priority in the big E Street Band tours, and then we get these interesting bits and pieces in between solo projects. Maybe he pivots and it's like an E Street Band every 5 years or so, just to show that he's still Bruce the Rocker, but the focus is more on sort of the singer-songwriter side of things. It's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It is really interesting.
Then Faithless in 2006, and I might be being a bit harsh here, but I think if he releases Faithless, it's not going to change an awful lot because I don't think he's going to tour it. I think it will get critical acclaim, and it's going to be coming out when he's out on the road with the Sessions band. And I
Yeah,
think we're probably just going to see a few tracks turn up on like the Sessions tour, which would be fantastic. And then I think with what's going on in the world, magic is going to naturally still happen in the same time frame.
yeah. So here's my what if question is let's say the film is made and whatever is the film, there's been a lot of speculation. There was discussion that Martin Scorsese was involved with, and I can't remember the book, but the book sounded really good. Would he have gotten another Oscar nomination? Not necessarily a win, but for a score and as original song. I think as good as it is, and with his name tied to it, I think he would. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think you look at that sort of period of time there, the sort of coming out of the rising, Bruce, especially within like American households, he was like the darling of sort of the country.
Yeah,
There was less political divide between your Democrats and your Republicans. And so I do really feel that there was a point there where I don't think Bruce could do any wrong in the general public sort of perception.
yeah,
And I just think if you, like you say, the caliber of director you're looking at, that's going to be an Oscar contender there.
yeah,
And then you put Bruce's name to it. There are songs on there that you can see, even if you're not saying that there's going to be a single song, but actually as a contender for sort of a soundtrack, the music, I definitely think that it would be unique. And then I think the thing from there, the launching pad is if he's had success with that, would that be a side project? Would we be looking at that he would be looking at different westerns and different sort of genres to write towards because he clearly can he loves his noir sort of films. Would he look to Twilight Hours? Could some of the music on that been used in like a noir sort of production? I suppose moving on to Twilight Hours,
sure.
I guess he would he have released that as a double C? I think that would have been less of a culture clash than if he'd released Tom Joad and Somewhere North of Nashville. I do think it would have got a great reception because I do think both albums are very strong. The question we said was, would he have done a full performance in the barn? Would it have been
Yeah,
both albums back to back, or would it be in the selection of his favorite songs? And if he had done both of those, does he then look to take that band out on tour? The big thing is, I suppose we were looking at COVID round about that time. So would that have happened? If COVID hadn't happened, would he have done an orchestral tour around smaller venues? And if he'd done two albums like this, when Letter to You came along the following year, would any of these songs appeared on the set list for Letter to You? It's interesting to think.
yeah, it is. And I think it would have, but I do think it's a discussion of where is because it's one of those things where, and I think you did a great job of exploring the what if. And by the way, I also love that episode of Doctor Who. What would have changed?
Yeah,
It's just not a matter of, oh, yeah, will nothing else would have changed. But I think as you talked about, it it very possibly could very much change.
yeah,
Yeah, I
100%.
totally agree. Yeah.
And I think Perfect World, just to top things off with, that's quite interesting because it's a load of different sort of songs and bits and pieces.
Yeah.
The songs from there that could have made Wrecking Ball a very different album. When you look at Perfect World was in contention, could Perfect World have replaced Wrecking Ball? if
Yeah.
Bruce hadn't have gone down to the angry sort of route there against the banking sort of crisis and bits and pieces like that, you're looking at songs like The Great Depression on there and like You Lifted Me Up and all of that kind of sort of stuff there that he was writing. And it shows how prolific. And the only thing I wanted to add about Perfect World is I know back in 2016, when Bruce had started touring The River, so we'd had the River box set come out Christmas 2015. 2016, he went on his tour. And then when he got to Europe, he mentioned that he was toying with the idea of bringing Western stars out at that point to have something new to play in Europe because he didn't feel like he could play the River front to back in stadiums. What if he actually brought Perfect World out at that point? Because he has got precedents from the end of the Wrecking Ball tour. When he went to Australia, he brought High Hopes out and then he had
Yeah.
fresh songs to bring into the set there. We could have brought Perfect World because all of those songs were written basically at that point. That could have been something that he brought out, and then we may have had sets where we've had less River songs, but we heard Idiot's Delight, Another Thin Line, Cutting Knife, Perfect World. And I think that's one that could have, a lot of those songs could fit into sort of a Springsteen sort of summer show. But yeah, that's my what ifs for you and my sort of theories then, Jesse.
I love that. That was so much fun.
Definitely.
Before we move to the Mary question, I did want to ask, is there any songs you're still chasing?
Lucky Town.
Lucky Town?
So Lucky
Okay.
Town is the big one. I would love to get Trapped as well. I've been really lucky with a lot of the songs. I was chasing Human Touch, but I was lucky to get that this year. But I do think Lucky Town, Living Proof. Obviously, if we could get anything off of Western Stars, would be amazing. Highway Patrolman, I would. Growing Up would be great. Trapped, yeah, I think they would be the main ones that hopefully summer 2027 is back out on the road and then yeah, catch a few more shows and can get a few more of those.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. This has been a blast. But before I let you go, got to ask you the Mary question. So, if you are new to the podcast, I end every podcast with this discussion. Jay Armstrong is a retired honors English teacher. By the way, Jay is going to be joining me shortly to talk about his new book. He has a new collection of short stories based on Springsteen songs. So, that's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to talking to him about it. So, if he would give his students the lyrics to Thunder Road and they would study it as if it was a poem, talk about the imagery he used, the themes Bruce explored, and then he would ask his class, does Mary get in the car? So that is your question. Do you think Mary gets in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
I'm a hopeless romantic. Thunder Road was the song that me and my wife walked out of the registry office to. So we
Yes.
walked out hand in hand. Mary got in the car.
Very
um,
nice. Good. So if someone wants to reach you, what's the best way?
so you can reach me on Twitter. So I think my handle is just Jamie Flynn. Reach me on Facebook again, Jamie Flynt. Obviously, look at me and Jesse are friends on Facebook, so find me through Jesse's page, Instagram again, and just under my normal name there. Feel free, come and have a chat about all things Bruce.
Thank you so much for joining me. I've had so much fun. I love this
Okay.
kind of walk down memory lane and what if. So very cool. And I certainly enjoyed visiting with you, and I hope we can do it again. For
Definitely.
now, listeners, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.